Hi, this is Mark Andrews with Pega, and welcome to the Way Forward in Financial Services. In today's episode, we're going to talk about how banks are trying to more dynamically personalize their efforts to engage with customers and how they engage with customers. And with me, I have Paul Hutchins, who is actually the president of a $3 billion retail bank in Texas before transitioning to his second career in technology and recently joining us here at Pega. Welcome to the show, Paul.
Thank you, Mark.
So, so Paul, there's been a huge focus on growing revenue prior to the crisis, and a lot of investments were made in coming up with determining what the next best action is. How has this been impacted with everything that's been going on?
Well, there's no question that the current crisis has posed significant challenges and risks to financial institutions, and has really highlighted the lack of focus on customer servicing needs. Traditionally, banks have focused on cross-selling a portfolio of their products and services to drive the revenue with some consideration for customer retention. But this strategy was primarily campaign-driven and really difficult to modify if the market were to change. In today's current environment, this approach is really no longer relevant. Banks must now pivot away from this cross-sell revenue producing model to one that's really more focused on customer needs and providing empathy. But they still need to find creative ways to drive revenue. The traditional offers that they've made in the past have really become less relevant. The needs of many of their customers are changing, and they're going to likely be focused on things like debt consolidation as customers seek refinancing and loan modifications in this current crisis. As unemployment increases, their customers are going to be looking more for cash and liquidity management solutions. And they're still going to be looking for financial advice as long as it's needs-based and suitable. However, all of these needs will vary based on the customer's individual situation. So the focus on customer service really has never been more important than it is today.
Well, I definitely see that. I mean, those offers that we continue to get in the mail for new credit cards, for new mortgages, new other things. Some may or may not be relevant, but it definitely can be viewed as a little bit insensitive if you're not taking into account the customer's current situation. So, how do banks go about addressing this? How do they make this shift to more dynamically engaging with their customers in a more personalized manner?
Yeah, it's a really good question. Banks will certainly need to improve customer engagement against these rising and changing customer expectations. They're going to need to be much more focused on relevance, on context, and suitability when they're interacting with their customers. And they need to create a more balanced approach in determining what these next best actions are across sales, service, and retention, balancing the need for revenue growth, but still being empathetic and addressing customers' real needs for products, services, and help. To accomplish this, they need to enable more dynamic, personalized actions in real time, based on their interactions across all of their channels. They must be more nimble and be able to rapidly change offers and strategies so they can provide much faster responses to the constantly evolving and changing customer demands that are out there. And last but not least, they really need to proactively identify potential service needs to preempt the heavy pressure on inbound call centers that they're experiencing today. Some call centers' response times have grown from an average of 40 seconds pre-crisis to over 40 minutes of wait times. And this certainly won't meet customer expectations. So focusing on customer engagement has really become one of the highest priorities for banks today.
Well, I love the comment you made about the need to be more balanced in the approach and to be thinking about not just cross-sell needs, but customer service needs. Obviously, selling never stops. They still need to maintain their revenue streams, but if they can treat their customers right, they'll earn that long-term loyalty that will serve them post-crisis. So can you talk a little bit about the impact this can have and any results you've seen by banks that are doing this right?
Yes, certainly the impact of increased investment in servicing customers has truly been transformational. According to a Forrester study, for every 10 million customers our clients have, they see $193 million of retention savings just by protecting customers who are at risk of leaving, by looking at these next best experiences across all channels. They've also generated an average of $226 million by delivering better one-to-one recommendations in real time when it's time to sell. And the really good news is the average payback is only 6 months with an ROI of almost 500%. And that's a truly transformational investment.
Well, those are some great examples, Paul. Hopefully this gives our viewers a taste of how they can start thinking about the path forward, the way forward to in their customer engagement strategies. So thank you very much for joining us today, Paul.
Great, thanks for having me.